Over on Jaguar Gatorade, a new college football video is out. In this video, we talk about a broadcasting controversy that happened in 1998 and how CBS screwed over the entire state of Hawaii. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. One of the greatest feelings as a player is when a team gets rid of you, writes you off as a non-factor, and then you're able to land on another team. You're able to play against the team that wrote you off, and you're able to completely dominate and take over the game. We've seen countless examples of revenge games throughout the history of the NFL, and I would be here all day if I listed every single one of them. From Bills running back Larry Kennebrew going up against the Bengals and winning while having one of the best games of his career, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, to Ravens wide receiver Steve Smith going up against the Panthers and scoring 2 touchdowns in a winning effort, to countless of other games in between. And with so many revenge games in NFL history, it's easy for some of them to fall by the wayside and be somewhat forgotten. With that, here's one you might not know about that might be the greatest revenge game in the over 75-year history of the Cleveland Browns franchise. The man you've been watching this whole time is wide receiver Bobby Jones, and for years, he was a member of the New York Jets, unhappy with his playing time, and unhappy with how little the coaching staff was utilizing him. And after they shipped him off to Cleveland, let's just say that Jones made the Jets instantly regret their decision, as Jones showed the Jets what they were missing out on. Because on October 9th, 1983, Bobby Jones put up a performance that nearly 40 years later should still be talked about as one of the greatest revenge games in the history of the National Football League. And this is the story behind that incredible performance. Before I talk about the performance in question and just how well Bobby Jones played, we need some context to understand just who Bobby Jones is, why he was traded in the first place from New York to Cleveland, and how important this game was. Bobby Jones first began his NFL career in 1978, when he tried out for the Jets and made it, which was odd, seeing as he never played a down of college football at any level before. You rarely, if ever, hear of skill position players from the United States who have zero college football experience. But that's exactly who Bobby Jones was, and was exactly what his path into the NFL was. And the good news for Jones was that, somehow, he lasted 5 seasons with the Jets. I'm not sure how many people expected him to even make it onto the final roster for 1 year, let alone 5 years. But Jones somewhat defied the odds and became a rotational piece at the wide receiver position for them. The bad news for Jones was that, well, he barely got any playing time. It wasn't because he was bad. In fact, when he started games and was on the field in an extended role, he actually played quite well. He had a great catch radius and routinely made diving catches that not many receivers in the league could make on a consistent basis. He rarely went down on first contact and knew what to do when he had the ball in his hands and had space in the open field. And there were quite a few games that he had where he played a ton that showcased his potential. He had 7 catches for 99 yards in a 1979 game against the Chicago Bears, and he followed that up 2 weeks later in a win with a 4-catch, 99-yard performance against the Baltimore Colts. He caught the game-tying touchdown pass with under 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter in a 1981 game against the Miami Dolphins, which ended in a 28-28 tie. And in the 1981 wildcard game against the Buffalo Bills, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, he was the most effective wide receiver on the team, recording 4 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown, with a touchdown helping to spark New York's incredible almost comeback in the fourth quarter. But those opportunities were few and far between, as the coaching staff decided to play guys that had more potential, even if they weren't necessarily better or effective. In 1982, Jones only caught 3 passes, as he was buried on the depth chart behind guys like Lamb Jones, one of the biggest draft busts in the history of the franchise, and Derek Gaffney, whose yardage numbers had declined every season since he entered the league in 1978. Maybe things would change with a new head coach, as after the 1982 season, Walt Michaels was replaced with Joe Wolven. But when camp started, as Jones was entering his 6th season, he found himself in a familiar position, buried on the depth chart despite being productive just about every time he got on the field, because he just wasn't fast enough in the eyes of the staff. Jones couldn't figure out what the problem was. and Jones was furious about how he was being treated by the Jets. As he would later say, "I didn't know what else I could do. They like speed, and I didn't have the speed of Wesley Walker and Lamb Jones. But sometimes, doers outweigh potential. I couldn't understand their reasoning for not using me anymore." He then added, "I had good years when guys went down with injuries, but as soon as they came back, I was back on the sidelines." Wesley Walker was hurt for 3 of the last 4 games of the 1981 season when we won crucial games to get into the playoffs, and I played well. Then, I had a good playoff game against Buffalo. I came back, and they only threw me 3 passes the next year. I felt if I was going to get anywhere in my career, I had to do it someplace else. Frustrated, with nowhere else to turn, he requested a trade, and got his wish in the offseason when the Jets shipped him off to Cleveland for a 10th round pick, which could become an 8th round pick if certain escalators were hit. Of course, the irony in this is that those escalators would be hit after what Jones would do against the Jets, so his great performance in the game we're going to talk about in a few moments let the Jets move up 2 rounds in the ensuing 1984 NFL Draft. Not that it mattered, as they wound up using that pick on Southeastern Louisiana punter Brett Wright, who never played a snap in the NFL. But that's beside the point. The point is that now, Bobby Jones was going to have a real chance to prove himself as a member of the Cleveland Browns. He was actually going to have a chance to be in the starting lineup for non-injury related reasons, and was actually going to play a part in the game plan and be trusted by the coaching staff. After 5 games, Jones' numbers were fairly pedestrian. He only had 10 catches for 123 yards and a touchdown, which, while better than 1982 simply by default, was not exactly the kind of production that he had been hoping for with this increased role. But in Game 6, everything would change, because that 6th game of the 1983 season would be against his former team, the New York Jets. And the goal for Jones, outside of winning this game, was to make his old team feel seller's remorse. Let's just say he did that, and then some. October 9th, 1983. It's week 6 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely critical matchup on our hands over at Cleveland Municipal Stadium between the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. Right now, the AFC is super competitive, as with only 5 playoff spots available, you had 8 teams sitting at 3-2 or better, with both the Jets and the Browns being in that category. While there's still plenty of time left in the season, the winner of this game drastically increases their odds of making it into the postseason and separating themselves from the rest of the pack in the conference, while the loser has somewhat of an uphill climb with 10 games to go if they want to crack inside that top 5. But aside from the obvious implications that this game had on the season, the real story here was Bobby Jones, who was in the starting lineup, and was getting that chance he so desperately wanted to go against his old team and show them what they were missing out on. And sometimes, players will downplay revenge games like this, and will say that they're treating it no differently than any other game, and regardless of the opponent, he just wants to do whatever he can to help his team win the game. Not Jones! Jones was treating this game like his Super Bowl. Jones said in the week leading up to the game, "I have a little extra incentive to do well this week. I wasn't happy with the way things were going in New York. I wanted to see what I could do playing all the time. I thought I should have been more involved from some things I'd done here. I didn't think my career was going to be that long, and I didn't want to spend it all as a backup in New York. I wanted to make a move and see how long I could play." So yeah, there was definitely a chip on his shoulder, and he was making that chip very public for the whole world to see. And that raises the obvious question: how would he perform in that game against his old team? Well, not only did the Browns win 10-7, winning on a 44-yard field goal by Matt Barr as time expired, but Jones had the best game of his career, and offensively speaking, was the main reason why the Browns won this one. On the final drive of the first half, he had not 1, not 2, but 3 catches for first downs, including an incredible 32-yard touchdown catch with 12 seconds left, where he had to make a full-on dive for the football, and he somehow came down with it. That was the only touchdown that the Browns scored all day. When the final whistle sounded, Jones finished the game with 5 catches, which was the most on the team, 68 receiving yards, and a touchdown. He had 3 catches, 32 yards, and no touchdowns in 1982 with the Jets, because he wasn't good enough in the eyes of Walt Michaels to get into the lineup. He nearly doubled his catch total and more than doubled his yardage total in this one game. And when I say that this 568 1/ line of a game was the best of his career, I am not exaggerating in the slightest bit. It was the first time he ever had a game with 5 receptions and a touchdown. In fact, this game was just the second time in his career up until this point that he had at least 5 receptions in a game, with the other time coming in a 1979 game against Chicago, where the Jets lost and he had 7 catches. The 68 receiving yards was the 4th most he ever had in a game at that point, and the 2nd most in a winning effort, with the only total better being his 99 yards in a 1979 win over the Colts. And the 1 receiving touchdown not only tied a career high, but marked just the 2nd time in his career that he caught a touchdown pass in a winning effort, alongside an earlier game during that 1983 season against the San Diego Chargers. So not only did Bobby Jones come close to breaking all of his all-time high records in one game, but he did so in a winning effort while scoring the only touchdown of the game for his team. And after the game, all of the talk was about Jones getting revenge on his old team, and how he was able to pull that off. Jones said on this game and that touchdown catch, "It was a tremendous feeling. It's hard to explain." Head coach Sam Rutigliano felt the same way, and almost felt like this was a made-for-movie script with how improbable the catch was and to come against his old team. As Rutigliano said, "It was a great moment for Bobby Jones. You couldn't have written the script any better unless you were his mother and father." Even though Jones said he didn't have a whole lot of bitterness toward the Jets, since they originally found him and signed him while he was working in an auto shop, since they honored his trade request, and they traded him to Cleveland, which was in his home state of Ohio, where he went to high school and some of college, he didn't downplay his frustration with the Jets, and how happy he was to have a performance like this, saying, "I was disgruntled. I didn't necessarily want to start, but I wanted a chance to contribute. There's no question that I feel good right now. I wanted to feel a part of the Jets offense, but I wasn't given that opportunity. To have shown them today is a good feeling." And even some members of the Jets, despite losing the game, were happy for Jones, and were happy that he got a chance to prove himself. Cornerback Bobby Jackson, who remember, was on the losing team, said, "I'm happy for Bobby Jones. He might have been the enemy today, but he's still our friend." Imagine losing an important game because of the efforts of one player, and then saying that you're happy. Tells you a lot about just the kind of guy that Bobby Jones was, and how maybe some people on the Jets also felt that he was wrong. In terms of revenge games, even though it's been largely forgotten outside of diehard Browns fans, who were around to witness it nearly 40 years ago, partly because neither the Browns nor the Jets made the playoffs that year, and partly because Jones never played again after the 1983 season, this performance by Bobby Jones absolutely deserves to be remembered, because it really is tough to do much better than he did in terms of the checklist for a revenge game. Beating your old team? Check. Put up a career best performance? Check. Provide, for all intents and purposes, the entire offensive output, being the main reason why your team won the game? Check. And make the opposing team not just feel like they made a mistake, but feel happy for you at the same time? Check. Because in 1983, that's exactly what Bobby Jones did. As even though he didn't catch a whole lot of footballs in New York, he made the Jets catch a whole lot of regrets after this game in Cleveland. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.